When 3 babysitters quit after just one day, Sarah knew something was off. Determined to figure out what was going on in her home, she set up a hidden camera, and what she discovered left her stunned. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting a soft glow over the breakfast table. A half-eaten bowl of cereal sat forgotten as my mind drifted, lost in a mix of confusion and frustration. So Lily, my 5-year-old, sat on the other side of the table, swinging her legs, occasionally giggling at her baby brother Max, who was busy smearing yogurt across his face. The kids were oblivious to my turmoil, to the tightness that gripped my chest every time I thought about it. "Here we go again," I muttered under my breath as I wiped Max's hands clean, his infectious giggles momentarily easing my mood. I didn't need to look at my phone to know what the message was. The dreaded notification that had been looming since last night buzzed persistently on the counter. I had felt that sinking feeling before. With a heavy sigh, I finally picked up the phone, already knowing what I would find. "I'm sorry, but I won't be able to continue working with your family. Thank you for the opportunity." I read the text from Megan, the latest babysitter, twice trying to make sense of it. Megan had been perfect, or so I thought, bubbly, responsible, patient with the kids, and genuinely excited when we interviewed her. She had been hired just yesterday, and now she was gone, just like the others. My chest tightened with anxiety, and I leaned against the counter, staring blankly at the message. I knew the script by now. Each babysitter would start with enthusiasm, then suddenly quit without a real explanation. No matter how polite or professional their message seemed, they always left after just one day. It didn't make sense. "What's wrong with us?" I whispered, rubbing my forehead as if I could massage the stress away. The faint sound of toys clattering from the living room pulled me back to reality. Lily was focused on her dolls, her little brow furrowed in concentration as she made up some elaborate story for them. Max toddled around happily, oblivious to the chaos his mother was grappling with. They were fine, normal, happy kids. So why was it that every babysitter who walked into our home left after a single day? It has to be something I'm missing, I thought as I deleted Megan's message. I was beginning to feel like I was cursed. Glancing at the clock, I knew Julie, my best friend, would be arriving soon for our usual coffee catch-up. Maybe talking things over with her would help. Maybe she'd have some insight into why this kept happening. I couldn't help but feel like the universe was playing some cruel joke on me. First, it was Emily, the sweet graduate student who had to leave because of unforeseen circumstances. Then Jess, the professional nanny with years of experience, had barely lasted through the first day before telling me that she wouldn't be coming back. And now Megan. 3 babysitters, 3 abrupt exits, all with vague reasons. Was it me? Was I asking too much? Was it the kids? I knew they could be a handful, but nothing more than what any normal children could be. They were sweet, loving, and energetic. What could be scaring these women off so quickly? I busied myself tidying the kitchen, trying to shake off the feeling of failure that had begun to gnaw at me. The idea that I was doing something wrong, that I was somehow making my home unwelcoming, kept creeping in, no matter how much I tried to push it away. When Julie arrived, her smile and the warmth of her hug offered a brief moment of comfort. I tried to hide my frustration behind a forced smile, but as soon as we sat down at the kitchen table with our coffees, the words tumbled out of me, too overwhelming to keep bottled up. "I don't get it, Julie," I said, placing my cup down a little harder than I intended. "This is the 3rd babysitter to quit after just one day. They all seemed great when I interviewed them, but they just leave without a proper explanation. I can't figure it out. What am I doing wrong?" Julie sipped her coffee thoughtfully, her brow furrowed as she listened. "That's really strange, Sarah. Are you sure you're not asking too much? Maybe the workload is heavier than they expected." I shook my head, my frustration mounting. I've been really clear with them about the job. The kids are well behaved, and I'm paying above market rate. I just don't understand. Julie leaned back in her chair, tapping her fingers lightly on her cup. "Do you think it could be something else?" I frowned, not sure what she meant. "Something else?" Julie hesitated, as if she was unsure whether to continue. Well, maybe it's not the job itself that's making them leave. Maybe it's something or someone in the house that's unsettling them. Her words hit me like a cold splash of water. I hadn't considered that. My mind immediately went to Dave, my husband. Could he have something to do with this? I quickly dismissed the thought. No, it couldn't be Dave. He had been supportive of my decision to return to work, or at least, he said he was. But as much as I tried to push the thought away, Julie's suggestion planted a seed of doubt. Could there be something else going on in my home that I just wasn't seeing? I spent the rest of our coffee day trying to stay engaged in the conversation, but my mind was elsewhere, turning over Julie's words again and again. I couldn't help but replay every interaction the babysitters had had with Dave, trying to find something, anything that might explain why they all seemed to run at the first opportunity. Julie left, and I was alone again, the weight of my thoughts growing heavier by the minute. I had to figure this out. The kids deserved stability, and I needed to get back to work. I couldn't keep going through this cycle of hiring babysitters, only for them to disappear. By the time the clock ticked past midnight, I had made up my mind. I couldn't sit around doubting myself any longer. I needed to know what was happening in my home. I wasn't going to wait for another babysitter to leave. I was going to take matters into my own hands. The next morning, after Dave left for work, I rummaged through Max's old closet and found the nanny cam we had used when he was a baby. It was small, discreet, and easy to hide. My hands shook as I set it up in the living room, tucking it between some books on the shelf where it wouldn't be noticed. I told myself this was just for peace of mind, but deep down, I was afraid of what I might find. But later that day, I hired another babysitter. I tried not to dwell on the failure of the last one. Rachel, the new sitter, was a sweet college student with a bright smile and a calm demeanor. She greeted the kids with enthusiasm, and for a moment, I let myself hope that maybe this time would be different. Maybe Rachel would last more than a day. But this time, I wasn't going to leave things to chance. Instead of heading to work after Rachel arrived, I parked down the street and pulled out my phone. My heart raced as I opened the live feed from the nanny cam, my eyes glued to the screen. At first, everything seemed fine. Rachel was playing with the kids in the living room, and they were laughing, clearly enjoying her company. But as the minutes ticked by, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go wrong. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. And then, just like clockwork, Dave came home early. I stared at my phone, barely breathing as I watched the scene unfold. Dave entered the house with his usual casual smile, hanging up his keys and greeting Rachel warmly. "Hey there," he said, his voice a little too friendly. "How's it going?" Rachel looked up from where she was playing with Max. "Oh, everything's great. The kids are wonderful." "Good to hear," Dave replied, his tone warm but with an underlying tension that I couldn't quite place. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Rachel hesitated but nodded, following him to the couch. My heart pounded as I leaned closer to the screen, feeling an uneasy mix of anxiety and dread. "Look," Dave began, his tone shifting to something more serious. "The kids can be a handful, especially Max. Sarah's been struggling with postpartum depression, and it's been tough on all of us." My stomach dropped. Postpartum depression? That wasn't true. I'd never been diagnosed with anything like that. What was Dave talking about? Rachel looked concerned. "I'm so sorry to hear that," she said softly. "But the kids seem fine to me." "They are," Dave said, his voice smooth and persuasive. "Most of the time. But it can get overwhelming. If you feel like this isn't the right fit, it's okay to step away now before things get too complicated." Rachel shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure of what to say. Dave leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "And just between us," he added, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "we've had problems with babysitters in the past. If they don't work out, it's usually for the best. You understand, right?" My hands tightened around my phone, my heart hammering in my chest. I watched as Rachel nodded, her expression uncertain. The tension in the room was palpable, even through the tiny screen. Dave was trying to manipulate her, to push her away before she could even settle into the job. I felt sick. This was why the babysitters kept leaving. It wasn't the kids, it wasn't me. It was Dave. He was sabotaging every single one of them. Tears stung my eyes as I watched the rest of the interaction play out. Rachel excused herself soon after, clearly uncomfortable, and I knew what was coming next. By the time I got home that evening, she had already sent me a message saying she wouldn't be returning. I felt numb. My mind was racing, trying to process what I had just witnessed. Dave had been undermining me this whole time, sabotaging every babysitter I hired, feeding them lies about me, about the kids. And I had never even suspected it. When Dave walked through the door later that night, I was waiting for him in the living room, the nanny cam footage still fresh in my mind. "Sarah, hey," he said, smiling as if nothing was wrong. "How was your day?" My hands shook as I stood up to face him. "I know what you've been doing, Dave." His smile faltered, confusion flickering across his face. "What are you talking about?" "I saw you, Dave. On the nanny cam. I saw how you talked to Rachel today and the others before her. You've been pushing them away, haven't you?" His expression hardened, his face turning cold. "You've been spying on me?" "I had to, Dave," I shot back, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. I couldn't understand why every babysitter was leaving, and now I know. You've been lying to them, manipulating them. Why? Why would you do that? Dave's jaw clenched, and for a moment he didn't say anything. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and controlled. "I was protecting this family, Sarah. Those babysitters weren't right for us. They didn't understand what we need. That's not your decision to make." I shouted, my voice cracking. "I trusted you, and you've been going behind my back, making me doubt myself, making me think I was the problem. How could you do this?" Dave took a step closer, his eyes dark and unyielding. "You were the one who wanted to go back to work. Hey, you were the one who hired strangers to take care of our children. I was just making sure we didn't end up with someone who wasn't fit for the job." I stared at him, my heart breaking as I realized just how deep his manipulation went. This wasn't about protecting the family. This was about control. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I can't stay in a marriage where I'm constantly being undermined, where you're sabotaging everything I try to do." Dave's face softened slightly, his voice taking on a pleading tone. "Sarah, please? I was just trying to help. We can fix this." But it was too late. The trust between us had been shattered, and there was no going back. I took a deep breath, my heart heavy with the weight of the decision I had to make. "I'm leaving, Dave," I said, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. "I'm taking the kids, and we're leaving." Dave's expression hardened again, but this time he didn't argue. He knew, just as I did, that there was no saving this, that the damage had been done. That night, I packed up a few essentials for the kids and me, my heart aching with every item I stuffed into the suitcase. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain: I was done living in a house full of lies and manipulation. As I loaded the kids into the car, I took one last look at the home we had built together, the life I had thought was solid and unshakable. But now, as I drove away into the night, I knew that I was finally free. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to navigate. And that was enough.